What's going on, everybody? This is going to be a video about a Craftsman 5 horsepower chipper shredder I picked up from Facebook Market for $5. I decided to go ahead and pick this up knowing that it wasn't working because these things normally run for about $300 to $400 on Facebook Market working. So when I got her home, I went ahead and began repairs, starting with the least cost options, working my way up to the more expensive ones. So I first purchased some new spark plugs, went out and picked up also in addition some starting fluid, and tried to pull on it about 40-50 times and couldn't get it to start. Next, I tried to rebuild the carburetor. However, I was successful in rebuilding it, but when I went to install it, I put a screw in the wrong place and tightened it too hard and broke it. So unfortunately, I had to go and purchase a new carburetor. Once I installed the new carburetor, I attempted to start it again with starter fluid, and I just was unsuccessful. It just wasn't started, and I was getting a lot of gas being sent into the carburetor that something just didn't seem right. So after taking a look at various YouTube videos that had very easy fixes to full-on rebuild the entire engine of this Briggs and Stratton engine, I decided to go ahead and start taking her apart. It seemed like it was going to be easy enough. So once I took off the piston head, I saw that one of the valves was lifted and wasn't closing. So unsure on where the piston was, unsure on where the engine was in the firing cycle, decided to go ahead and pull on the starting pulley and softly and just kind of watch the engine work. As suspected, the valve was stuck. So at least now I felt pretty confident. I knew what the problem was. So I went out to the local auto store and picked up some tools I would need to do a brief valve job. So when I got home, I ended up, anything that I touched, I cleaned up to the best of my ability. And I also then did the lapping compound to ensure that the valves had a tight seal around them. The valves themselves, with the exception of the one being stuck rather, seemed to be in very good shape, but I went ahead and did the lapping compound just to make sure, since I had the engine open already. So after cleaning her all up, I went ahead and put her back together, and this is the video of me starting her for the first time. So after I trimmed my hedges in my front yard, I went ahead and did a quick 15-minute test on my chipper shredder, and it ran great. So I figured I was ready for the big time and began to chop down some branches from the top of my hill that I then brought down to my grass, and my mother-in-law and I removed the small twigs and branches from the big branches and prepared it for chipping and shredding. So I started the chipper and shredder here and put the bag on there because I thought it would be a good idea to go ahead and prevent the debris from coming out just wildly, to at least make it a little easier to clean up. And it turned out being not the right idea, but let's go ahead and go here to the end. So at the end here, this is where I started realizing that, hey, the engine's starting to slow down, and I wasn't sure what was going on. And then all of a sudden, it just died on me. So I didn't show this on the video. However, after I came back to it the next morning, I realized that it was clogged, and that was what was causing the engine to stop. So after getting it started, I decided I was going to give it a go again. But first I wanted to move the chipper and shredder away further from the chickens. You can kind of see in the lower left area some of that brown debris that was still stuck in there. So I placed the chipper shredder in a better place to not hit the chickens, and I decided I was going to go ahead and leave the bag off this time. In preparation for getting started, I decided to put on my safety equipment, which included my goofy goggles, my earmuffs, my gloves, and my open-toe boots that was essential for working here in California. But unfortunately, after I thought I was all ready to rock and roll, after about 12 pulls, I had no success. So I decided I was going to go ahead and try the starter fluid again. So the first thing I had to do was go ahead and remove the air filter and then apply the starter fluid. And this is going to be my next attempt to start. The white smoke you see here burning off is the rest of the oil in the cylinder. So everything was appearing to be good. I let it run for a little bit, and once I was satisfied, I shut her off, let it stop, and then went ahead and put the air filter back on and tightened her down. So once we did that, next thing we had to do was to put on my safety equipment, get ready, and fortunately when I went to start her, she started up immediately. So once she was started and running and ready to roll, it was time to send it. Everything was going just fine. As I was transitioning from one side to the other, I realized that the air filter was barely hanging on. So I shut her down to investigate what was going on. As she was shutting down, I saw that she was hanging on by only one bolt. So no big deal. I figured there was either two things that happened. Number one, I didn't tighten her down enough. Or number two, I didn't put her on correctly in the first place, and that's why she wasn't tightened. So I took my time, figured out how the filter was supposed to lay within the case, and went to go ahead and bolt her down. So it took me a second to figure that out. But once I kind of played with it and fidgeted with it, I figured I was pretty confident that I had it in the right place down, and I tightened her down real tight. And I was ready to go, went to start it, and after 1, 2, 3, about 4 or 5 times, she just wouldn't start. I decided it was time to I would take a look, and I noticed that she was not really pulling that easy, and she was clogged. So I got my tools and decided to go ahead and flush out the debris in there, and then went ahead and tried to start it again. That's why I saw a little bit coming out. I figured she was clean, so I'd go ahead and put all the safety devices back on within the shredder and then give it a start again. But unfortunately, after about 4 or 5 pulls or how many ever it was, it wasn't starting again. So realizing I needed the starter fluid again, I removed my equipment, removed the air filter, and then got ready to start. The good news is after all these setbacks, she finally ran, and she ran great. She ran, as a matter of fact, until she ran out of gas. And that just goes to show that, you plan things out. You can't really plan for all contingencies. And when you go to send it, you just need to be ready to just keep stepping over the obstacles that get in your way if you want to finish things. After raking up all the debris, here was the pile that I was left with. Doesn't look like much, but I'll show you what I was able to do with it. These were also some of the branches that were left when she ran out of gas. Finishing up, showing you what I was able to do with the mulch. Put some next to the mango and orange tree I have here. And then we'll go ahead and walk around the chicken coop, and I'll show you where I was able to put it next to the elderberry tree here. And again, I had put all this stuff down before I did my first intro to my garden video. Put some around my pomegranate tree here. And here's some of the larger branches that I took out and was getting ready to cut down with the chainsaw for firewood. Put some around the Mexican lime tree. And then we move on over here where I was able to put some around the semi-dwarf trees. Now, I was able to get all this mulch by using my new chipper shredder from this tree here. Thank you.